Amen. I know you all love them, and you guys have been great support to them on the mission field, and it's great to have them here for a few weeks. Amen. So let's go again right to the restoration part. I'm going to ask each of you to share about your salvation experience.
You want me to go first? Cool. So for me, it wasn't like one moment, I would say, because I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up on the mission field, so I grew up seeing God move. I saw healings, I saw prophecy, spiritual warfare, people coming back from the dead. Like, it was great. That was my childhood. But I would say inside, I still was trying to find kind of my worth, like, who am I, my identity. Even though I knew God existed, even though I knew he was real and he was good, I did not believe that I was worthy to be loved. And so I would say my salvation story is kind of twofold. It's the one side where everybody saw that I was, prophesying over people, healing people, living the perfect Christian life, but inside I had so many things that I was dealing with. I was depressed, was suicidal, I had all of these things. And so really it was just God being there in my darkest moments, saying, I love you, I'm here for you, consistently over and over and over again. And when I was 15, that's when I really realized I wanted to give God my life. And since then I have not looked back, and I've dedicated my life to doing whatever he wants me to do, really. And it led me to my wife, so, good things happen.
For me, my story was kind of different. I grew up in a broken home, and my mom absolutely loved the Lord, and no offense to my parents, they're great, but from my childhood came a lot of trauma and abuse, and I developed PTSD at a young age, and it was really hard for me. And there came a moment in my life where I wanted there to be change. And I asked God if he would come and reveal himself to me in kind of a very direct way. I basically challenged him and said, if he was real and if he was good, then would he help me change my situation? And would he prove who he is to me? Or I had this plan, I was going to run away and start my own life at 8. And he did. He showed up, and in the transition of life, I lost everything and realized that God is the one that provided everything. And in my testimony, there's been so many seasons of him renewing and restoring who I am. And I think about my testimony and my salvation story as an onion, and how each layer is a layer that was hurtful, but God redeemed and made new. So it was kind of a progression.
So pretty different stories. Growing up around, exposed to a lot of amazing spiritual experiences, to not having much of that, and then crying out to God to have it. So you had to know it for yourself, and you had to discover it for the first time. So really cool. So now, being restored to God, the next thing God does is he begins to work in us and inspire us for his purpose, what he's called us to do. So tell us now a bit about that part of your journey, of how God inspired you to desire to be sent out, not just to be part of a local church, but to be sent to other locations to do missionary work.
So for me, after God had healed a lot of my heart, I then had the desire that I wanted to be part of the healing that he would use in other people and to restore them. And so it was, I just encountered this God that holistically wanted to heal who I was and restore me. And I wanted to see that happen and be a part of that change and restoration in other people's lives. And I found that best happening in my travels in missions, and there was such open doors for me to be part of that, and God caught my heart on fire, and I just really wanted to see that change in other people.
I would say for me, growing up in YWAM, there was a little bit that just rubbed off, that I naturally was like, I want to carry on doing this. This is great. Traveling, before I was 15, I'd been to 22 different countries and just seen God do stuff. So I think there was a part of me that was like, I just want to continue to do this. I just want to continue to serve in these places where not many people want to go, But then the other side, I have a huge passion for teaching and discipleship. And I think what YWAM does naturally in their University of the Nations is equip and teach and send people out and help people discover God for themselves, which is a journey that I had to go on. And so for me, it was the side of I just want to continue to serve and continue to see the world. I love to travel. I used to want to be a pilot, so just going around the world. YWAM allows that, in its mission, but also just the equipping side of seeing people being transformed, seeing people just get excited about who God made them to be, get excited about their passions, and to cultivate hunger for Him. That's a huge part of my passion, and YWAM has a very direct way of doing that, through their schools and stuff like that. So for me, it was kind of both.
My desire is to see missions and the local church operate as one. That the churches are setting bases and that we're directly working with missionary organizations such as Youth of the Mission. And so that I want to hear that part. I'm going to throw you guys some curveballs, some questions that are not on the list that I gave you. But one of them is, what did the local church role have in inspiring you towards missions as well? I know you were born on the mission field, so it might be a little different for you, but you were born here in South Jersey, raised here, and you got connected to this local church, other local churches. So tell me a little bit more specific about how you were inspired in the local church setting for missions.
I think so. It all kind of started in Ocean City, with the first YWAM school, and just seeing how local churches poured in to the group of students that I was a part of was amazing. And that's when I met you and Lorraine and some other local pastors. And I think your role, honestly, if it wasn't for you guys, I don't think I would really had this desire to continue with missions, because it's people like you helped me to develop a heart for the nations, and your stories and your testimonies, and especially how this church specifically has welcomed me in to be part of the membership of this community. Wow, it was amazing. And this church just really wants you to be full and set free in your calling and your purpose, and just to be released in what brings you joy. And I think being here helped me to have the desire to dream bigger and to step outside of actually chasing my dreams and being like, okay, God, wow, you're calling me to Australia, but I've never left South Jersey. That was terrifying for me. But yet there's people in this church that spoke life into me and said, you know what, that's where I see you going, and I want to steward those dreams that you have that God is speaking over you in your life. And so I guess I would say that this church specifically was kind of what catapulted me into trusting God and believing that that's what God had for me, which was really cool.
That's good. Thank you.
I would say for me, so when I gave my life to Christ, the church that I was at, the pastor, he was really what inspired me to study the Bible. I saw his passion, I saw just how he communicated and just his zeal for God, and I was like, I want that. And then I started thinking about the places that I've been to and the fact that there are people out there who have never even heard of Jesus. And I think for me, it was kind of this we have such abundance in our local church, and there's people out there who don't even know the name of Jesus. They don't even know that He loves them, that God died for them. And so it was kind of there was this part of me as well that was I want to bring what we have such access to other places. I want to bring this community, this family, this relationship, and the diversity that we have in local churches. I've been to a lot of churches, and every single one of them is different. And I think, to me, that just screams God's heart, that there is diversity, and I want to share that with the world. I want to take what I've been privileged and blessed to experience and share that with people.
Awesome. Well, next is my favorite question. Okay. So, because we all love stories, right? And when I was a young man serving with Youth with a Mission, another acronym for Youth with a Mission, of course, is Young Women After Men. But I hope that's not true. But it was in my case and in your case as well. No. But a lot of people connect on the mission field. You spend a lot of time together, and you find people with the same passions. And so it just happens with Youth of the Mission, a lot of people get married. And you guys both met on the mission field. So tell us about your love story.
All right, well.
You can handle it because I'll talk forever.
Okay. I think, yeah, God, like I said before, God is so redeeming. And I think for me, when I went to Australia the second time, I left to do a Bible school, and I went there specifically not looking. And I was entering a season with God where He wanted me to learn a new side of what love was. And that with Him, there was this intimacy, and I could trust Him to be vulnerable, you know, with a group of people. And so I think in a similar way that Aaron came into that season and God was like, I'm going to teach you what love is. And in his side, he's like, he wasn't looking for anyone, and everyone kept saying that he was going to meet his wife, and he was like, get behind me, Satan. And so, like, yeah, it was just kind of like where our hearts were, which was really cool because I really wasn't looking. But it was really ironic, though, because when I was doing my Bible school and learning all about God's Word and falling back in love with it, God would speak to me things throughout the day about, you know, okay, today I want you to see that love is kind. And then He would actually use Aaron to demonstrate what He was speaking in those 3 months that we were in Australia together. And so if He said love is kind, I remember at the YWAM base, Aaron would be there holding the door for all the students to enter. And there was like a lot of students because there was like 500 students there. So he was holding the door for them, and then it got time for me to enter in, and him and I would kind of have a standoff at the door. And then I would be like, no, it's fine, you go in. And then he said, no, you go in. And then there was this like, no, really, you go in. And then once I entered in, God would whisper to me that love is kind. And so He kept doing things like that. That was really cool for me. There was another night where I was doing my homework really late at night. It was like 10:30. We were having a really long day. Our day started off at 6 o'clock in the morning, cooking breakfast for 500 students. And then 8 a.m. we were in the classroom, sometimes until 10:30 at night or later, studying 6 days a week. And so one night I was like so done. I was like, I'm so tired. This is so hard. I want to go to sleep. And I was like crying. And Aaron would come over and he would ask if he could pray for me. And that day God was speaking to me that love is patient. So there was this like harmony that God was interweaving with God's voice and my ability to trust someone else as a friend even. And then through that time of, you know, living in community with other people, we got to see different sides of each other. We got to see hard times, good times, stressful times. We got to see what we were like around other people. And by the end of the 3 months, I realized that we both had feelings for each other. So we had that conversation, and we sat down and we were like, okay, you know, we both want to focus on where we are, and we don't know what the future holds. We didn't necessarily want to talk about the future either, because for me on my side, I wanted to see that love was different, because I had dated around and just had really broken relationships from that. And so I wanted to trust God that if He brought a man into my life, that the whole thing would be different. And so we talked about what created intimacy, and from that, we decided not to do any of those things. So we didn't talk about what God was doing in our lives personally. We didn't talk about anything like hard, our past, our future, our dreams, our deepest desires. It was strictly, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? Stuff like that. And then he went to the Philippines on his outreach, and that's when I decided to stay in Australia to do another school, the Worldview School. And I thought he was going to fall in love with a Filipino girl. He told me after he graduated that he loved me. And I told him, no, he didn't. And if he did, then he had to prove what that meant to me. Prove what that meant, basically. And that was that. I went to Nepal on outreach. He went back to England. And after I graduated, we talked once a week in Nepal. And again, it was still like the same boundaries. And then I Skyped him in a coffee shop in Australia afterwards. And we checked in with each other, where each other were, and I was like fully expectant for him to be like, I've moved on, you know, there's someone else. And he told me that he still loved me and he still wanted to pursue me. And I told him good luck, because I didn't know where I was staying in New Jersey when I got back. yeah, and then, I came back and I was staying with Suzanne Crawford, and she was asking me all these questions, and then she eventually asked me if there was a boy, and I said yes, and she thought that was like the best thing ever. And so she started telling other people at church, and the whole church opened up a place for him to stay and welcomed him in, and they just really liked the idea. I found someone. And it was really cool though, because on my side, God was so redeeming, and he pursued me through 8 different countries, and he just didn't give up. So yeah, God was awesome. Did you add to it?
Sure. I don't know. I mean, I could talk for hours. Yeah, for me, I was going into the season like, God, it's just gonna be me and you. I'm gonna be like Paul. I'm just gonna rock the world, and it's gonna be great. I don't need no woman. It's all good. You're gonna teach me about love. Why do I need a relationship? Type of thing. So everyone was like, you're gonna find your wife in YWAM. I'm like, I will not be a statistic, right? Get behind me, Satan. And then yeah, Jennifer Sarah walked in. I like dropped my food and was like, she's pretty. That's not why I'm here. Focus, type of thing. And so, yeah. And then she just kept popping up, and I was like, man, okay. So I remember like I introduced myself to everyone, and then her last, because I didn't want to be keen. So I was like, yeah. Anyway, but God was really like, when I was younger, he basically gave me like this list. My dad was like, you should make a list so you know what you're looking for, because otherwise you'll just go after everything. And I was like, that's great. So I like made my list, and God was like, throw it away. Made my list, he was like, throw it away. I like did it again, he'd throw it away. He was like, this is not right. So I was like, what would you put on it? And he was like, okay, 3 things. First, do they love me as much or more than you? Because you don't want to be pulling someone, and you don't want them to be pulling you. Can you see it in their day-to-day? Can you see it when they're stressed? Can you see it when they're upset? Do they still represent me? Is there a print, my print in their life? And then, are they called to the same thing? Because if I'm called to missions and she's not, one of us is sacrificing. And then is there attraction within my attraction? Is there something that I can grip onto when I don't have, the feels or whatever? Is there friendship there? Is there something you can grip onto when it's hard? And no one had ever made it past the first one, except for Jennifer Sarah. And I was like, God, is this the person? And he was like, you're just gonna have to wait and see. So, yeah, and it was a lot of like, she tested me. Oh my gosh. Like, I was like, keep going, show her what love means, keep going. And I was like, are you sure this is the one? He was like, yeah, it's good for you. I was like, okay, it's humbling. So, but she is amazing, and everything that I could have dreamed of, yeah. And we got married, and it's great. We got married here, actually. Yeah, right there.
Who married you?
You did.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And on the wedding day, Jennifer Sarah was like, I'll bring the rings because I'm going to be there. I was like, where am I in this? And she forgot the rings, so. You remember that? Yes. You were like, do you have the rings? I was like, no. Anyway.
Yeah, where do we go from there?
Yeah, so it was fun.
Well, how about we all say, aww.
Aww. If you want to hear the deeper story, you can come ask us.
Yeah, that could go a lot deeper. But first comes love, then comes marriage.
Not in front of the camera.
Then comes the baby in the baby carriage.
Yes.
So we got a baby carriage right over there with baby that I was privileged and honored to dedicate as well. And so what is life now, that adjustment? It's been